I was the youngest, 5 years behind my oldest sibling, the next oldest sibling. But I went to the same elementary school my older siblings had attended. And by the time I got there, the teachers already knew my last name. And unfortunately, they didn't associate it with good behavior. My older siblings struggled. Our home life was chaotic and unpredictable. And that chaos often showed up at school. My brother, I believe he carried the heaviest burden. You see, he didn't just suffer from the physical maltreatment of my father. He also suffered emotionally and mentally. See, my father didn't want to build a relationship with him. Unfortunately, the only attention that was really provided to my brother from my father was negative. And the most heartbreaking part is that my brother really yearned to be a part of my dad's life, to build a relationship with him. Looking back now, I understand something I couldn't have back then. Children don't act out because they're bad. They act out because they're hurting. But when I entered that school, something happened. I became a breath of fresh air. I cared about my grades. I followed the rules. I wanted approval. And looking back, I think part of me was trying to bring some stability into a life that felt very unstable. My older siblings were already experimenting with drugs, but because I was 5 years younger, I didn't have their influence yet. I hung out with kids my own age, and for a while, I started to develop my own identity. My first best friends were Shannon and Becky, and they lived right down the street. We met when we were toddlers, when I stubbed my big toe on Shannon's big wheel. It seems funny now, but that moment created years of friendship. Shannon was about a year and a half older. Becky and I were in the same grade, but technically I was older than most kids in my class because my birthday's at the end of December, so I had to wait an extra year to start kindergarten. Shannon, Becky, and I did everything together. We had slumber parties, we played house, and just spent time being kids. And I remember something interesting happening. Sometimes when I would go over to their house to play, they would be playing with these two other girls because they had other friends in the neighborhood. And I always wondered why I wasn't invited to play along as well, why we couldn't all play together. And that was something that I experienced all through school, up through high school. There would be females that just didn't like me, and I never understood why. And being that I was so insecure, I became a people pleaser for many, many years. I thought, if I could just be nice enough, helpful enough, good enough, everyone would like me. But that's not how life works. Around this same time, I had another best friend, Gina. She actually moved out of state when we were in second grade, but we're still friends throughout this day. And looking back, Gina might laugh at that part because truthfully, I was a bit bossy to her. Like we would do our nails and my nails would be all perfect, but she'd just get the leftovers. So the fake nails that she put on were too big for her nail beds. It's funny looking back now because even though I was insecure, I guess I still tried to control things sometimes. Maybe as a way to create order in a life that felt so out of control at times. Then there was my other best friend, another Shannon, Shannon G. And I spent a lot of time with her family. I became very, very close with that whole family. And looking back, I believe my mom probably talked to Shannon's mom about how chaotic our home life was and asked, if she could help, if I could spend some time over there. There was something about being over there that felt safe, calm, stable. When they moved away and were no longer walking distance, I was absolutely devastated. I remember Shannon's mom had to come and check me out of 6th grade because I was crying so uncontrollably. Looking back, I realized that family represented something that I needed. And when it disappeared, it felt like I was losing stability all over again. There was also something else happening during those years. I was becoming very aware of how others perceived me. Growing up, I was often told I was pretty, and I did get a lot of attention from boys, even at a young age. And while that might sound positive, it also created complexity. Because as I mentioned, all through school, there were always girls that didn't like me, and I never knew why. Looking back, I now realize that anger is always a second emotion and the least complex emotion to demonstrate. It's easy to be mean or hurtful towards someone else, but we act angry when we're hurt, jealous, depressed, scared. That's why anger is a secondary emotion, because when we feel those emotions, we often react in anger as a shield. Sometimes people react based on their own insecurities. Sometimes jealousy shows up as unkindness. And sometimes children are just trying to figure out where they belong, just like I was. But even though it seemed I was doing well on the outside, my body was responding to stress in ways I didn't understand. By the end of 1st grade, I had started my period. I was still just a little girl trying to navigate elementary school. And suddenly I was dealing with something most girls don't have to deal with till years later. At the time, I had no idea what was happening and why. But looking back now, I realize how much stress I was living under. When children live in high stress environments, their bodies sometimes mature faster, as if preparing for survival. And in many ways, that early experience made me feel different, older, more aware, long before I was emotionally ready. One memory that stands out from this time was my first kiss. I was in 3rd grade, and all my friends in the neighborhood came over to my house to stand outside and watch as me and Billy had our first kiss. And what was supposed to be an exciting event had me terrified, because as a child, I struggled with halitosis. Even though I took good care of my teeth, had regular dental checkups, practiced good hygiene, now that I understand the way our body works and the way trauma affects the brain and the body and the nervous system, I realize that this too could be attributed to high stress, because in high stress environments, our nervous system goes into fight or flight. And those physiological changes can affect digestion, which affects saliva, and dry mouth leads to bad breath. So I was always worried that my breath smelled. So I was constantly sucking on certs. I think they were winter fresh mints. Before he came over, I was just eating one right after the next. And after our kiss, he commented that I had a rough tongue. And that completely traumatized me. I was embarrassed, ashamed. I even developed a complex about it. And it wasn't until much later on that I realized the reason that my tongue felt rough was because I had been sucking on those Certs mints nonstop. But as a child, I didn't have that understanding. I just internalized the shame in moments like that. And moments like that quietly shaped my insecurities and my self-image. Looking back at this phase of my life, I see a little girl trying to be good, trying to belong, trying to understand people, and unknowingly beginning to shape the beliefs that would influence the rest of her life. Because soon, things would start to change. As I moved into junior high, I began to idolize my older sisters. And slowly, I started to become someone different.